Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're here tonight to talk about our long-range master facility plan. Apologize that Dr. Lexman could not be with us this evening. He is actually out ill. So I am Deidre Raymer. I'm the Director of Leadership and Learning for our school district. I appreciate the way I see all of you wearing masks, as we do have a mask requirement. If you need one, please let us know. We do have some available to you. A few things to introduce the group that we have with us and talk a bit about our agenda for tonight. Tonight we have with us our Director of Finance and Operations, Caitlin Wendler. We have Steve Eichmann, who's the Manager of Facilities. We have Amanda Stewart, who is our Director of Communications and Community Relations. We have Noah Lee, who's the President of our School Board. Marianne Marshall is at the back. She's our Director of Human Resources. And Jane Carr is also here from our School Board, as well as one of the representatives that we work with from C.J. Schmidt. So thank you to everyone for joining us this evening. We'll talk a little bit around our agenda, which is really to go through about 25 minutes of a presentation. We've been working for the last about 18 months on what is a long-range facilities plan for our West Allis West Milwaukee School District at all, which includes parts of Greenfield, as well as parts of New Berlin, within our greater school community. And that's been part of our strategic plan since we first had a strategic plan in 2016. And when we refreshed our strategic plan in 2020, creating a long-range facilities master plan has been a part of that for a long time for us in West Allis West Milwaukee. We have been spending many, many hours behind the scenes trying to decide how to do some of the work that needs to be done within our schools in a way that's right for our community at the same time. So we've been doing that work over time with representatives from each of those 4 communities, with representatives from parents, from students, from faculty from each one of the school sites, as well as local community leaders like the mayor of West Allis, representatives of the village of West Milwaukee, and invitations for other community members to join us as well. So what we're here to do tonight is to begin and end on time, to build an understanding of the long-range facility needs within our schools, to provide opportunities for individuals to go deep into specific areas of our plan. What we're not here to do tonight is go into detail about every single building within the presentation, or to address questions related to other district matters. So we'll have an opportunity after the presentation to go into some small groups that will be set up in the hallway. So if you had more questions around the capital improvement needs at one of the elementary schools, Steve will be out there to answer those questions. If you had more questions around the tax impact, Caitlin will be out the back to answer those questions. I'll be at the back to answer any of the questions that you have around the teaching and learning needs in each one of our schools. So please hold any questions that you may have during the presentation tonight and save them until you get an opportunity to have those discussions in some of our small groups. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Eichmann, who's going to talk about the timeline that we've used to create the plan.
Thank you. As you can see here, as Deidre said, we've been working on this for a while now. We actually started initially back in January, end of January, first part of February of 2020. And so we've been working, getting the RFP out, having interviews, selecting the construction management company, selecting architects to work with us through this. You can see some of the different stages it went through where we did a facilities study. What we did with that is not only did the construction management company and the architects walk through every single part of the building, They walked through with district staff. We walked through with plumbers, electrical contractor, plumbing contractor, HVAC contractor. We looked at all of the mechanical systems in every single building. After we did that, then what they did is they compiled all that information. And I wanted to add that one thing that was one blessing, I guess, if you will, in disguise from COVID was that we were able to come into the buildings during the school year and during the school day last year, and we didn't have to worry about interrupting education. So we did that, and we came up with a long-term facilities master plan that identified all of the needs within the district. And one thing that's important to stress is that we came up with a dollar amount, but what that does is that just looks at updating all of our major infrastructure, like our heating and cooling, the blacktop, the walls, the ceilings. It doesn't do anything to modernize the individual classrooms. And this next timeline, part of this whole process is that we wanted to hear more than just from district administration. So what we did is we formed a committee called FACT. And it had parents on there. There were 2 school board members that were on there, and then there was some administration. The school board members and the district staff did not vote. Whenever there was a vote, we didn't vote. It was all up to the community members, the staff, the students that were on the committee, because it was really about what were they feeling and what did they think. Now we're to the point where we've sent out a community survey, and we sent out a community survey.
You made the slide bigger? No, for those of you here, this is as large as this slide will be.
Gee whiz. And you want us to trust you? Wow.
All of the information on the slide, if you're unable to see them, are also right available on our website. So you can look in depth at any of them. There's going to be several graphics up on the slide that are going to be hard to see up here, but that's why we do have all of the information right as you log into our website if you want to get more details about any one particular piece.
And so here you can see where the community survey, we did the preparation of it, then we did deployment. It's gone out and it should be in mailboxes, or people should have received it already. If you haven't, you can see Dr. Stewart and she can give you a copy. Or she can also give you a copy, but she could also give you the link to log in and do it online if you'd like as well. And then the results, it's open until October, is it 18th? You have until October 18th to go through and to complete the survey. Then when we were working with FACT, and actually through this entire process, there were 2 guiding principles that we always reminded everybody about before every single meeting. And that was, how can the schools be renovated and or replaced and or consolidated in ways that inspire and shape the education our children and communities deserve? And then the second guiding principle, how can we do this in ways that are cost effective for our community?
Like other school districts in our state, the West Allis West Milwaukee School District has been dealing with declining student enrollment. In Wisconsin, the school funding is tied to enrollment. Thus, the fewer students we have, the less money we receive. In 1975, over 12,000 students attended our schools. Today, we serve about 7,400 students across 2 high schools, 1 project-based learning high school, 3 intermediate schools, and 11 elementary schools. Given that our enrollment has declined, we cannot afford to continue to heat, clean, and maintain all 17 schools. Consolidating schools would allow us to operate more efficiently. Therefore, the district has made it a priority to develop a plan to right-size and modernize our school buildings.
So as the video talked about a little bit, we're going to discuss next the problem and the need. One is that we have too many schools for the number of students that we have. At one point, West Allis West Milwaukee School District served approximately 12,000 students. Now with the same number of buildings, we're servicing 7,400 students approximately. So we have excess capacity. As we talked about, we have aging buildings. The buildings have been well maintained, it's just that they're reaching, or they have reached the end of their useful life. The average age of all of our facilities is over 75 years old, and some of the buildings are 100 years old. And we also need spaces to support hands-on learning. So the proposed solution, number one, is to right-size, which would be reduce the number of classrooms and schools. And also it's important to note in there that we would not be increasing the class size. Because like I said, we have excess capacity. All that would happen is if we close a school, those teachers would simply move to another building, but class sizes would not be changed. And then modernize, which is update the systems and create spaces to support hands-on learning.
So a little bit on our financial background and where we've come in the last few years. So our financial situation has significantly improved over the last 5 years, and that's due to a number of factors. We've done a number of cost management strategies and efforts, including aligning our expenses to our declining enrollment, which has helped steady our financial picture. And because of these factors, our credit rating has significantly improved. We're now in the high grade, ranked by Moody's, which is where about 50% of the school districts in the state of Wisconsin are. So a place that we can really be proud of. And these factors have allowed us to now focus long-term on our facilities picture. And how this affects our mill rate. So the graph you see here is the mill rate over the last about 10 years. So the mill rate is how the, the mill rate is how our, okay, thank you. The district's portion of the property tax bill for our homeowners is calculated. So this number has been declining. It's in its lowest point in over a decade. The number that you see here in 2017 that jumped up to 1099 was when we received an OPEB settlement the year before, which impacts how our mill rates are affected the following year. So basically the amount of aid that we get, then it affects the total tax levy, which then affects the mill rate. So the number that you're seeing here projected for 2021 is $7.94. Again, it's just a projection. We learn our final calculation at the end of October with our approved budget, and once we receive a few more factors from the state. So what you're seeing is that the lowest number, the lowest financial tax impact in over a decade, which is our mill rate. And I'm going to turn it back over to Steve now to talk through facility planning background.
Thank you. So the Facility Advisory Committee team, or community team, or FAC, considered the following factors to better educate our students, operate more efficiently, and right-size our district. We looked at excess capacity, where was there excess capacity and how much, the aging buildings that we have, ADA compliance, and then also outdated classrooms and support areas. And this is on our website as well. But what this does is it shows a picture of all of our buildings that we have. It shows the building, the address, it shows when it was built and the number of years old it is. Now one thing to remember with this, when we say the number of years, how old it is, what we're talking about is when the original building was built. A number of the buildings have had additions and renovations, but the age there relates to when the original building was constructed. Future of our buildings, I'd like to take a moment to talk about the immediate facility needs at our elementary schools. The effects of natural daylight are extremely important in school design. Studies show that exposure to sunlight improves concentration and productivity, enhances mood, and is cost-effective, potentially saving the district a significant amount in operational costs per year. Some of our elementary schools need a large number of windows replaced. Other schools need only partial replacement. To ensure the safety of students, staff, and all others, parking lot repairs are needed at many of our schools. Often referred to as an AHU or air handling unit, an AHU plays a vital role in a building's air conditioning system. Designed to distribute temperature-controlled air around the entire building, AHUs keep the environment comfortable. As AHUs stop performing correctly, air can become humid or less clean, creating an undesirable indoor environment for our students and staff. Many of the AHUs within the elementary school buildings are nearing the end of their lifespan and need replacement. HVAC systems are vital for the health of all school buildings. The existing systems have aged at our elementary schools, and updating these systems is important to improve energy efficiency, air quality, and operational costs. The current HVAC systems within most of our elementary schools have exceeded their lifespan and are in need of updates. Safety and security are more important now than ever. To ensure student safety, updating the fire alarms and sprinklers to varying degrees at various elementary school buildings are a top priority. Since many of our buildings were originally constructed in the 1930s, school accessibility needs to be addressed to varying degrees at each elementary school. Partial or full roof replacements are needed at most of our elementary buildings. As we plan for the future,
the effects of natural daylight are extremely important in school design. Studies show that exposure to sunlight improves concentration and productivity, enhances mood, and is cost-effective, potentially saving our district a significant amount in operational costs per year. Some of our intermediate schools need a large number of windows replaced. Other schools need only partial replacement. To ensure the safety of students, staff, and all others, parking lot repairs are needed at many of our schools, like the one pictured here. Often referred to as an AHU or air handling unit, an AHU plays a vital role in a building's air conditioning system. As AHUs stop performing correctly, air can become humid or less clean, creating an undesirable indoor environment for our students and staff. Many of the AHUs within our intermediate school buildings are nearing the end of their lifespan and need replacement. Heating, ventilation, air conditioning, or HVAC systems are vital for the health of all school buildings. The existing systems have aged at our intermediate schools, and updating these systems is important to improve energy efficiency, air quality, and operational costs. While our buildings are safe for students to attend right now, we are planning ahead for things that require regular replacement over time. Since many of our buildings were originally constructed in the 1920s and 1930s, school accessibility needs to be addressed to varying degrees at each intermediate school. Partial or full roof replacements are needed at most of our intermediate buildings.
Hi, I'm Deidre Rimmer, Director of Leadership and Learning for the West Allis West Milwaukee School District. Just like our buildings, our educational spaces were originally designed and built in the 1920s and 30s. And over the years, much has changed regarding learner empowerment, technology infusion, and the skills needed to be ready to live life on their own terms when our students graduate from school. As we consider how our learning space is currently serving our students and our community in the future, I'd like to take a moment to talk about the educational needs at our high school. We have currently science labs that were built many, many years ago that are not up to date with the technology that is needed for today's 21st century education. For teachers to properly educate students and for students to properly learn, modifications to the science space will be needed to make it ready for the modernized experiments and exploration that we want our students to be doing. Our band and choir rooms at both high schools need renovations and updates. We have specialty courses in music, in sound engineering, and other creative things that students have brought to the table that they want to explore during their time in high school. We're using the old spaces that we have and trying to put new equipment into those spaces in ways that is just as efficient for the goals of some of the courses that we're offering. We also have expanded quite a bit of our opportunities in youth apprenticeship. We want our students knowing that whether their pathway is to go to a 2- or 4-year college, enter the military, go right into the workforce, or go on to develop the skills to learn a trade, that we offer them as many choices as possible during high school to explore. Even if a student goes on to a 4-year university, we'd like them to spend some time while they're in high school learning different sorts of skills. We have many students each year who want to take our culinary programs, and we've grown our culinary youth apprenticeship and a partnership with MATC to be able to offer more options to students. However, we are trying to do that work in old spaces, like the one you see here. It's difficult to teach students how to become a professional chef or a professional baker in a kitchen that really wasn't designed for that many, many years ago. The traditional classroom layout has changed from rows of desks with a teacher at the front of the room. Classrooms now allow for flexible seating arrangements that allow for easy movement and collaboration. As we want our learners using technology tools to problem solve and communicate with others across our world, we need to offer multiple power outlets and charging stations for an integration of technology. We need bright, open spaces that have the room to build, make, and create. We have increased our post-secondary opportunities and advanced placement courses so that all our learners have access to a college-level experience during their time in our schools. We continue to grow our access to resources and shared spaces so that we can collaborate better with our 2- and 4-year universities, as well as introduce our students to the opportunities available to them by developing their skills in a trade. Our spaces need to ensure that all learners have access to the experiences that allow them to explore and investigate what they want to do after graduation. These experiences and this exploration need to start in 4- to 5-year-old kindergarten and grow each day until graduation.
Okay, so that video kind of helped you to see kind of some of the condition of some of our current buildings. We have things that just by the nature of the way they're used that need upgrades. Much like the roof on my house, right? That they've patched it for me yet again, but the next time those guys come back, they're going to say it is just time for a new roof. And that kind of investment is something that schools would struggle to save up for, given the way our funding works in the state of Wisconsin and how typical school funding works. The dollars we're given each year are designed to be used on the students that come to school each year. So saving up for some of these very, very, very large projects and the number of them that are coming our way based on the age of our buildings just presents a challenge to a school district. At the same time, we know we have to invest in our schools. So it's time to also invest in the kinds of spaces that other school districts are offering to their students. And you can see some pictures up here and more on our website. So these are actual schools in our area and how they're currently building the spaces. You can see that they are bright, they are open, they have opportunities for flexible use, and they include a lot of things that our current buildings don't include, like sensory spaces and spaces to do some redirection for students who are struggling during a class period. We're doing a lot with what we have to work with in our schools, but there's so much opportunity when kids are learning in these different kinds of spaces. So it's time that we have to do something. What we'd like to do is modernize and give back to the students and to the families that we serve each day.
One of the themes that was talked about in all the videos was ADA compliance. As you can imagine, with the average useful or average life of the age of the buildings being over 75 years old, there's a lot of buildings where we have multiple floors, but all we have is stairs. So if you're on crutches or in a wheelchair, then it's difficult, if not impossible, for you to get from one floor to the other. Also then, the capital improvement budget, each year we plan a capital improvement budget that includes regular maintenance and planned replacements but it will not be enough to cover all the replacements and upgrades that are needed. Because through the facilities master plan process, we identified $248 million worth of capital improvement needs. And the budget has been $1.2 million per year to meet all of that need. So if you do the math, it's how many times does 1.2 million go into 248 million, and that's how long it would take us to get that taken care of. So that's why we're looking at, what do we need to do to get our buildings and our classrooms to where the students in the community deserve them to be. And then these are some pictures of some of the, one of the entryways at one of the schools. And these are all just pictures of where the different areas have just worn out. They need to be replaced and or redone. Because like I said, at some of the schools, they're 100 years old or getting close to 100 years old.
Okay, so when it comes to right sizing, what is being proposed? So part of the bringing in experts to give a thorough analysis of every functioning part of each school, give a thorough analysis of every part of each building that we own, was also to bring in a company to do a long-term projection study. So we looked out for 15 years, right? We know we are declining enrollment, like well more than half the school districts in the state of Wisconsin. But what does that mean, declining enrollment? So we know that over the course of the next 15 years, we're currently serving about 7,400 students, and we anticipate that that number will keep slowly declining, but that we've seen the bulk of the decline so far. So we anticipate that within the next 15 years, we'll be serving somewhere at around 7,000 to 7,100 students. So now is a good time for us to right size, because we could project out that if we right size now, we'd be right sized for a long time to come and not have to be doing this all over again in the next couple of years. So what's being proposed in the master plan is from elementary schools to reduce down from 11 elementary schools to 8 that serve 4K through 5th grade. We talked a lot in the FACT committee about, do we go 4K through 8th grade? Do we have any 4K through 12th grade schools? And that team really did make the recommendation to stay with our current grade configuration. It also would mean at the intermediate level that we would go down from 3 intermediate schools down to 2. And at the comprehensive high schools, so that's our bigger, larger high schools, that we would go from 2 comprehensive high schools down to 1. We would still maintain a smaller project-based learning high school. We have a virtual charter school, and we have another charter school called Shared Journeys for school-age parents. Those would remain the same. And many of you I know had some questions around, whoa, what happens if you go from 2 large high schools to 1 large high school? And what I'll tell you is it's very unusual across the state to be running 2 large high schools, because if you think about autos and metals and woods and bands and orchestras, which are very expensive to run, it is exceedingly unusual across our state to be doing that when one of the high schools is at or under 1,000 kids. And Central has been at or just under 1,000 kids for the last several years. So it makes some more sense. We'll show you how you set that up in a way so it doesn't feel like you have 1,800 students in one high school, which is, again, not atypical across the state and not atypical in our area. Like Steve said before, it does not mean an increase in class size. It means a reconfiguration of the space so that we're using it differently. The reason that the board decided to go ahead and start with the high school question was a couple of things. It was important to us that there is something in this first design of the first phase of the plan that impacts every single student. And the high school level impacts every single student that we serve. So that was a big important part of the plan. The other thing is to really expand opportunities. So right now with 2 large comprehensive high schools, we have classes where 8 kids will sign up at one high school and 9 kids will sign up at the other, and that means neither group gets to have that course, because it wouldn't be fiscally responsible to run a course with that few students in it. Right now, we have several students who go up and down Lincoln Avenue all day long. We have students who attend courses from Central at Hale and from Hale at Central, because at least that keeps the opportunity there without having to say no to some of the students who want to explore something that's a more advanced course or a course that we just cannot offer based on the facilities needed to run it at the 2 schools. A couple of other things would be that the results of some of that are just the net savings per year and the operations per building. And as you heard Steve talk about the amount of capital improvements that are needed, If we were to right-size and modernize, we also then wouldn't need to be investing some of the same dollars in capital improvements for buildings we would no longer be using, which allows us to more effectively use that $1.2 million a year to maintain and upgrade the buildings that we have while we attempt to go through this process for some of the other schools. Thank you. And then that just shows those enrollment projections. One thing I didn't note on the last slide is about athletics. You may not know, but we already co-op, meaning both high schools come together for a number of sports and theater programs, right? So because of size, it wouldn't be safe to run a varsity football program at one of our high schools if it meant we were putting freshmen out on the field with other schools in our area that were putting seniors out on the field. Developmentally, those are really different phases. So we are already co-oping quite a few sports so that we can continue to run those extracurriculars and give our kids the opportunities they deserve. But we're already doing that by combining the two schools and having students from DOTP attend those in order just to be able to field some of the sports and run our theater programs. So lots of those things have been happening for a while. This next step just allows us to do even more and open up more chances for our students to see things and do things in their high school time to really figure out what they want to do when they leave us.
So as you can imagine, to do all of this, it's going to take a lot of money, and so obviously it cannot be done at once. So we've talked about how would we do this, and as Mrs. Reamer said, we talk about possibly the high school first. And you can see here that in phase one, we create one comprehensive high school, continue to operate DOTP High School at the current location, look at also possibly renovating and expanding West Milwaukee Intermediate School, and then idle or close Lane Intermediate School, and possibly either repurpose it or seek to sell the building. And then at the elementary schools, would close or consolidate 2 elementary schools, and the 2 exact schools have not been identified. And again, we have enough excess capacity at our current elementary schools that we could close 2 without renovating any of the other remaining schools and still be able to accommodate all of our students. So in this slide, we call it Phase 1, Project 1, which would be to create one comprehensive high school. And because of its size, the current Nathan Hale site, located at Lincoln Avenue and South 116th Street, was chosen to create the new comprehensive high school. And the school would be named at a future date. And in this here, you can see where the West Allis Athletic Complex is, the soccer field, and all the areas that are represented by yellow, that would be proposed new construction. And then the reddish or kind of pinkish area, that's renovation. And so you can see if this plan were to move forward the way it is, it really would look like a brand new school because what's there existing now would be completely engulfed by new construction. And then at the one comprehensive high school, would add a 2-story classroom wing with labs, a secure entrance with the office, band, choir, orchestra, and auditorium, gym with locker rooms, swimming pool, a career and technical ed, or as we called it when I was in school, shop class, and then kitchen, cafeteria, and library. And then the parts that would be renovated would be other classrooms and labs, the gym, fitness, and locker rooms, and then the parent pickup and drop-off configuration and add parking. And one thing I want to note here is that when we talk about the budget of what this would be, tennis courts are included in the budget amount. They just haven't been identified here as to where they would go, but they have been included in the budget.
And all the information you're seeing here, again, was mentioned, it's all online, so I know this is really small and hard to read. There's bigger posters that are out front afterwards if you're interested in taking a look at those, and I'm certainly welcome to check out our website as well. So, talking through now, what does this project cost? So the project of the single comprehensive high school is a $180.2 million project. What does that mean for a homeowner? The impact of this project on a homeowner's property tax bill is $150 annually for a home valued at $100,000. So what that means is for every $100,000 of equalized property value for your home, you would add $150 worth of your tax bill So it goes on top of your current tax bill. And we break that down monthly because oftentimes we think about our home budget as a monthly budget. So what that means for a monthly budget is a $12.50 increase in your monthly expense towards your property tax bill. If your home is valued at $200,000, you multiply these numbers by 2, and so forth. So this graph will look familiar because we looked at it earlier. This is the mill rate. So again, the mill rate is how our taxes impact the homeowner's property tax bill. So we saw that $794 is our projected 2021. Again, that's projected. We'll know for sure what that looks like at the end of October. And if we did go to a referendum and had this additional project added onto our property tax bills, we would have an impact in 2022. So we just took that $794 and stretched it out as a projected through 2022, is what you're seeing here. And so we would add $1.50 onto that $794 mill rate. And this then, that $9.44 amount, is the impact that would cost a homeowner for every $100,000 of equalized property value for your home. So again, we can stretch the line out to see where that $9.44 equates from our previous years, and you can see in 2018 it's less than that, and moving backwards through time, that $9.44 mill rate is actually less than we've seen in our recent mill rates.
So phase 1, project 2 would be to renovate and expand West Milwaukee Intermediate School, because it would need to be expanded and updated if we were to go from 3 intermediate schools to 2. The project would add band, choir, and orchestra, gym and locker rooms, career and technical ed, a secure entry with an office, and it would also renovate and create a 2-story classroom wing with labs, library and classroom, art and classrooms, and then parking and parent pick-up, drop-off configuration to improve traffic flow and student safety. One thing I want to mention is that this auditorium would not be changed. We would update the HVAC, maybe the lighting, but otherwise the auditorium would stay the way that it is currently.
So what you'll see in your community survey that you received in your email or in your mailbox is Project 1 and 2 combined. So there you'll see Project 1, which is the one comprehensive high school, and then you'll see Project 1 and 2. So that's what we're looking at on this slide here is the total amount for both of these projects, which is a $229.3 million project. And what that looks like then for a homeowner is an estimated annual tax increase on a home valued at $100,000 of property taxes, $100,000 of equalized value, I'm sorry, is an increase of $196 annually on your property tax bill. So if you take that divided by 12, again, we think about our home budget as a monthly budget. Over 12 months, that's $6.33 per month, an increase in your property taxes. So again, you just do the math to figure out how much is your home valued at, and estimate then your increase in your property taxes throughout each month and or throughout the years.
So we also get a lot of questions around what would that look like if we went from 2 comprehensive high schools to 1. And actually what you would do is close both locations. So both would get the opportunity to have a process of creating a memory space for each school and the way that it functioned, as well as West Milwaukee High School, which when we switched around schools several years ago, we didn't do. So you capture the murals that are up in the buildings, and you put some documentation together on what that experience was like. We did quite a bit of investigation on fact on creating one comprehensive high school on what is currently the Central High School site, as it is a little bit more centrally located. There is not enough acreage to do it. And so it just, by the nature of the land that we own and being landlocked in our area, it would be to redo things at the Nathan Hale site. So what would happen is the next incoming class would all go to Central, and actually Central has enough square footage to fit all the students in it, while you were doing some renovation and construction, and then slowly you'd start a class of students at Hale, at whatever the new name and location becomes, and phase out the last of the old location at that time. So that way you're able to do all the construction and all of those pieces over the course of a few years, because it does take a while, and be able to do that while still allowing students to have that comprehensive high school experience and as much exposure to what normal high school looks like at that time. But we'd start to do the combining by moving all the students to the current central location and then over time phasing back into the Nathan Hale site.
So, question, can we just save up for one of these projects or both of these projects? This is how school funding works. We have a fund, there's various funds throughout our budget, and Fund 46 is a capital improvement fund, and it would allow us to save. However, this year's dollars, as we talked about, are intended to be spent on this year's students. And in order to save up for a project so large, it would literally take us over a century to save up. So, and in doing so as well, it would have a major impact on our educational programming and class sizes, on our health insurance premiums and such, because our budget is not fit to support saving for such a large project, which is why school districts go then to their communities for support of these types of projects. So we'll talk through then what does this look like in terms of a referendum. There's two different types of referendum. The one that we're talking through now that one of these projects could turn into, based on the results of our community survey, is a capital referendum. And what a capital referendum is it asks for permission to add to a district's debt to exceed the tax levy in order to pay for a facilities project. So this is how we would fund a project of this sort, is through a capital referendum. This is as opposed to an operational referendum, which pays for school operations, such as salaries and benefits, or utilities, or educational programming. So they're two very different things, and the one that we're working through, which one of these projects could turn into, based on our community survey, would be a capital referendum. Another piece that's interesting and applicable to us at this point in time is our ESSER funding. So ESSER stands for Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief. These are COVID relief dollars. We have them over the course of the next 3 years to spend, and our state legislators did not increase our per pupil funding within our revenue limit, and they've stated that is because we have these ESSER dollars. So we can utilize some of our ESSER dollars for capital improvement needs in terms of improving air circulation and air filtration, which would be an HVAC project or an air handling unit upgrade, or increasing our air filters, which we did a lot of throughout while our schools were closed, or our buildings were closed, I should say. But there are various guidelines that we have to follow in terms of our ESSER funding, and the state does require us to spend a portion of them. I will use DPIs where it's unlearning us. So we have to work through and within the guidelines that are provided by the feds and by the state. And so the next steps in our project in terms of ESSER planning is to do a community survey. So towards the end of October, staff and families and parents and the community will be welcome to take a survey on how our ESSER dollars are spent, and then the board will approve our plan as well.
So to recap, the survey has gone out, and as I stated earlier, if you haven't received a survey, please see Dr. Stewart and she can give you a survey. There are two ways that you can take it. You can either do a hard copy or you can do it online. If you do it online, you do have the ability, if you want to go back and change your answer before you submit it. So the two survey questions would be, would you support a $180.2 million referendum that provides funding for the high school project as described above? And Mrs. Windler went through what that would mean for an estimated tax increase for every $100,000. And the second question would be, would you support a $229.3 million referendum that provides funding for Project 1 and Project 2? So what that means is that, that Project 2 and Project 1 would be a comprehensive high school, one comprehensive high school, and renovating and updating West Milwaukee Intermediate School. So Project 1 is just the consolidation of the two comprehensive high schools into one. Project 2 and 1 would be where you do that and you renovate and update West Milwaukee Intermediate School.
So we've mentioned this a few times, but all of the information from this whole process is available on our website, and the QR code that is on your agenda will take you right to this facility planning page, and it's all sorted out with all of the information that you need. There's also a section on that facility planning page that has a frequently asked questions drop-down menu. So we have filled that with a lot of the questions that we've been getting, but there's also a spot where you can ask your own question if you feel like it has not been answered yet.
We're checking that often because we want to make sure that we're answering all of the questions. So as Steve mentioned, if you need an additional survey or an additional survey code, please see me. If you did receive your survey in the mail, this is what it would look like. And when you go online to take your survey, there's a spot for an 8-digit code. So that's where if you need another one of those codes, I can get one for you.
That's the end of the presentation. So now what we'll do is, we have a large group tonight, so what we'd like to do, if people would like to take a tour, Ozzy, who is the head custodian here, he's in the back. He will take half of you on a tour of the building, just kind of show you some of the areas that we're talking about in terms of needing updating and are at the end of their useful life. And then we'll also have, out in the lobby, we'll have tables set up, whereas Mrs. Reber mentioned before, you can ask specific questions. And then when the tour is done, the first tour is done, we can switch if you'd like, and then he would take you, whoever's remaining, on another tour. Thank you for attending.